Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me for episode 93 of the show. I'm your host, Louise H. Reed. If you're listening live, welcome. I hope you're safe and well during this period of uncertainty, thanks to COVID-19. If you're catching this podcast recorded, obviously it's a podcast then, it's a recording, I still hope you are safe and well. Last week, the show took a slightly different turn compared to my other shows. You'll still be getting inspiration from a kick-ass guest. But as the world is quickly evolving, I feel my show needs to reflect that. As the world is in flux, so am I, just like you, and so is my show. What won't change, however, is how I continue to show up for you each week in a real and vulnerable way. That, for sure, you can count on. So today I'm titling the show, Two Mums Talk Mental Health. It was spawned by a conversation I was having with a dear friend and today's guest, Olivia Schmitt. She said something to me in a text that I wanted to share with you. She said, here we go. She said, I think we should talk about the mental health crisis around this being COVID-19. Not just the isolation, but the expectations we put on ourselves to hyper perform. And that, my friends, is what spawned this conversation with dear Olivia. And so welcome to the show, all of you listeners, and welcome to the show, Olivia.
Thank you. Hi, Louise.
Hi. This has been like a long time coming. And
I feel like, yes, for sure.
We have had many a conversation about many things. And I really appreciate your willingness to come on the show today to talk about this topic that so many of us are struggling with right now. It's a topic I think many of us struggle with all of the time. And yet what COVID-19 has done for us is really shine the light on any cracks we may have in any part of our life, I believe.
Yes.
And so when you and I brought up this topic and chatted very briefly about this idea of mental health, I thought, let's do it.
Yes. So you had posted that message about, it was a quote from was she a psychologist? I didn't look at it. She was talking about how it's not hard because you can't do it. It's hard because it's just too many things all at the same time. And we're always trying to tackle a lot of things every day anyway. And this, like you said, it's shown a light on it. It's magnified any, issues that you may have been dealing with before. And say you weren't dealing with any issues, which would be, you're living a miraculous life if that's the case. But I don't think that there's a single person out there that wasn't probably trying to work through some other thing in their life at the time that all of this happened. And whether it happened in slow-mo, which, I felt like it kind of did. Like we knew it was happening around the world and we assumed that we weren't going to be impacted. And then we watched it kind of trickle into our lives. But then there was just like this, all of a sudden, a boom, big reaction. And you don't know how to quite be prepared for something like that. It's not an act of war, but it is an act of war in the way that just such a quick impact, I would say, like just how quickly it all happened.
I feel like it's a war of a different sort.
Yeah.
And a war that we, certainly not in our lifetime, have ever witnessed. And the impacts are far-reaching for sure, and we're just really starting to see those. I wanted just to share a little bit of the post that you're referring to. It was a post that was written by Emily King. She's a PhD in what? I'm not sure. Let's hope it's something related to the topic she's talking about. I was assuming that when I shared it. Regardless, it's awesome.
It is awesome.
She said, parents, what we're being asked to do is not humanly possible. There is a reason we are either a working parent, a stay-at-home parent, or a part-time working parent. Working, parenting, and teaching are three different jobs that cannot be done at the same time. It's not hard because you're doing it wrong. It's hard because it's too much. Do the best you can. So that was the post that struck me. That's the one you just referred to, and it has struck many. I think this is a post on LinkedIn that has been of mine personally, that has been shared more than any other post that I've put up.
It's it's what everybody's feeling, right? We're internalizing so much of what's going on around us. And I feel like you then take all of this and you make it a reflection of what you're capable of. And maybe that's the lens that I'm looking at it from, because that's the kind of person that I guess that I am. But we're starting to like mash these two things together that don't really have anything to do with each other. We're honestly all just trying to hold it together with not knowing all of the answers that we want to have right now. And there's always a lot of unknowns in life. This is just so much more than we're used to having to try and, just accept. There's a lot of.
I don't think we accept unknown. We don't accept unknowns very well at all in general.
No.
I don't think.
No. As humans, no. I don't think that's not a comfort zone. Some people are okay with the unknown, and sometimes I can talk myself into believing that the unknown means that there's a lot of possibility. But there's also a lot of uncertainty, and people want stability. Mm-hmm. We can't find stability in a situation like this.
No.
And so I feel like the impact of that is just, it's just massive. How do you process through something like this?
How are you processing it?
It's funny. So this had come up. I'll be perfectly honest. I am actively in therapy. I recommend it to anybody.
Me too.
It is. Oh my gosh. I mean, seriously, the idea that I thought I didn't need therapy in my life has quickly been corrected, but I won't. Hopefully the person that told me I should, start going to therapy doesn't take credit for all that. But, the question came up in our conversation as to how I was dealing with it. And, she was just saying that she's fielding calls all day long from parents going, I don't know how to do this. I can't do this. My kids are going to hate me. I don't know how to teach them. I don't understand the homework that they're doing. Mm-hmm. It's like just constant. And, she said to me, she's like, you're not meant to do this. Even if say you're an educator professionally and now you're home with your kids, you're not meant to do all of this. She's like, you can try and run this like your kids are in school right now, or you can just try and provide them structure and love. And she goes, structure does not mean you're going from 7:30 to 8 to 8:30. She's like, that's not what that means. It means we're going to do a little bit of work time. We're going to have a little bit of play time. And we're also going to find time as parents to make sure that we're doing the jobs that we need to be doing. And she goes, you cannot expect any more than that of yourself. Anything else is no longer healthy. And it was like, she's like, this is what I'm telling all of my parents. And I feel like as parents, we want everything. We want to normalize this as much as we can for our kids. But that is a heavy burden because there is nothing normal about this. And if you try and do that, you're setting yourself up for failure and disappointment. You're creating expectations that you can't meet. And I don't mean that we're not capable of great things as parents. I mean, we're parenting every day the best that we know how. Mm-hmm. We're getting our kids through to adulthood the best way that we know how. This is just a whole other set of things that we're then trying to add onto the pile. And I think we're forgetting about the importance of our own mental health in the middle of it. We want to do all of the things, especially if you're a high achiever with high expectations.
Perhaps know someone like that, maybe close to home.
I know a couple of people.
There's so much what you said were gems. I love also what you shared that your therapist said to you. I feel like what she shared in that 2-minute piece could have been the whole conversation. It's like, okay, I got what I needed from the conversation today. You can build me for an hour and thank you. So much to sort of recap from that. What I took was provide them with some structure and love. Mm-hmm. And how simple and how powerful.
Yeah. We're not here to teach collegiate level courses to our kids. I mean, you know, I asked my middle schooler, what were you working on when you left school? And he's like, I don't know. Well, it's a hard place for me to start from then, right? And I'm not an educator. I'm not even good at training people at stuff necessarily. You know, like it's not part of who I am. So for me to like try and completely switch gears is not, it's just not healthy. It's not a good thing. It just stresses me out and it makes me feel like I'm failing as a parent if I can't figure that out. And yeah, so it's just structure and love are so much easier than trying to make sure that I know how to do new math and biology and you know, pre-algebra.
So I've been really, yeah, right. So I've been really knocked down a few because one of my boys is doing some grade 9 math, and turns out, despite the fact that I did university calculus, I do not remember grade 9 math. So that was a little humbling. So yes, I echo everything that you just said. Why do you think we struggle so much with being as kind to ourselves as we would be to a friend? Because if I were talking about this with you, which we've talked about many, many things, I know what you would say to me.
Yep.
I know you would offer me kindness. I know you would offer me, suggest that I have more compassion for myself. I know exactly the kinds of messages you would send to me. Yet I believe that we would hang up the phone and you would not necessarily take on those same, you know, you would not be as kind to yourself, and vice versa, right? We're all like that.
Yep.
Why do you think, I feel like mums especially, I can only talk through the lens of a mom because that's all I've been. I've not been a dad. I've not been anything else. Why are we like that?
Oh gosh, I wish I could figure that out, because it's like a constant reminder to myself to stop doing that. And thankfully I have people like you in my life and other friends that when I start to get in that cycle in self-talk, and I'm saying it out loud, but I'm also saying it about myself to other people, that they will stop me and say, would you say that to a friend? I think that we assume it's like this weird thing. I don't know if I'm going to be able to connect these two things, but I was reading the Gifts of Imperfection, highly recommended by Louise. And, you know, she was talking about this horrible experience that she had and how she just thought she, you know, like she was just upset about this thing, and was talking through it with a friend who said, you need to put away the measuring stick. And so we create these impossible expectations for ourselves, and then we're just trying to hit it all of the time. And like, I can look at you and say, it's okay if you can't do it, Louise, but I damn sure better be able to figure out how to make this happen. It's just this weird self-talk cycle that we get into. And if you're not being intentional about breaking that every single day, then it's really easy to spiral very quickly. And yeah, I can say to my neighbor, like, it's okay that you, like, I saw your kids playing outside for 6 hours, but I made mine read for 4 hours. You know, it's like, you know, it's like we create these weird just standards in our heads to where we think that we need to be able to do everything all at once, and we can't. You know, it's just like, the more you do it, the worse the cycle gets.
So true. And so how have you, like, I know for me, I've started to pick away at this, and it didn't start until I was 40. And so it's been 5 years of this, and I think it'll never end. 5 years of peeling back layer by layer. And just when I feel like I've got to a place where it's the core, more gets revealed. But it's this place of inquiry, of pausing, of self-reflection, and asking some hard questions. They're simple words, but difficult questions to kind of expose. Where was I going with this? Like, what have you learned, even in the last month? Because I was asking myself this morning this question. What have I learned about myself, even over the last month?
Oh, wow. Oh, that is such a big question. I feel like I have so many notebooks. I'm so glad I did go get my evidence journal, by the way.
Yay. And I can start, because I'm totally putting you on the spot here with like some really totally big questions.
I'm happy to share. So I try and here's the good thing about being home. My notebooks that I need to write in as I'm like working through stuff and I need to just be able to get that thought so I can get back to what I need to be focusing on are always right next to me.
And I want you to tell us about your notebooks.
Okay, so there's a lot of notebooks. Okay, so I do have my therapy notebook, which is stuff that I need to make sure I bring up in therapy. I have my journal. I have a notebook. I have my evidence journal now of miracles that come up in my life. And then I have a notebook where I write notes to other people. So, and I may or may not ever share those things with those people, but it's just kind of like, if I have something that I feel like I need to tell them and just maybe waiting for the time to tell them, or maybe the moment's going to pass. And it's never written in anger. It's always,
or get off your chest, perhaps.
Yes. It's like, I was thinking of you, or this came up because, and it's not necessarily something that you want to like send them in a text or even explain in a phone call. I just feel like sometimes I need to be able to just, get that message out of my system onto paper. And every once in a while, like somebody will send something to me then later in the day and they'll be like, oh yeah, I was just thinking of you. I'm like, that's so weird. I wrote about you in my notebook this morning. So and then I have work notebooks too, which are just like stuff I need to make sure that I do for work. So
there is a job.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's always the last one I write in. So, oh my gosh. So this is one thing that I learned about myself on Friday. A friend of mine had posted this message about, and I don't know anything about the circumstances, but just struggling with something that had just been like this monkey on his back, and that he was refusing to forgive himself. Like he couldn't move past it. And he's like, once I realized I wanted to be in a better place in my life, it was very obvious to myself what I needed to do. And I was instantly just like in tears when I saw this, realizing like there are things that have occurred in my life that I haven't let go because I refuse to believe that I'm worthy of moving past those things. And so really just like making this effort, which it's not going to be, maybe it was an overnight thing for him. I didn't really ask about his process. But for me, it was like, okay, I have to make an effort because I want to clear this stuff, right? I want to get past it. I want to be healthier. I want to be stronger. And so, so that was, boy, this is very revealing. But yeah.
I told you, get ready. Who knows what comes up in the show?
Yeah. But when I don't forgive myself, right? So then it leads to a whole bunch of other issues like self-worth, self-limiting beliefs, negative self-talk. Like a lack of forgiveness is like a big catalyst to a lot of other things. And so it's just, And then it all of that like ties into everything in Brené's book. Like, whoa.
So Brené Brown, this is The Gifts of Imperfection. I talk about Brené Brown a lot on the show. I feel like her and I, and you as well, I think the three of us could be really good friends.
Oh, for sure.
I really do. And maybe Oprah too.
Why not?
Her books, I feel like, are ones that you can read numerous times. And then each time, so a moment ago, I was talking about the layers that you sort of peel back that reveal more about your soul and who you are. And I feel like her books can meet you where you're at.
Yes.
And so since I recommended that book to you last weekend, I've picked it up again. I read it a couple of years ago and I'm in a different place now. And yet what I've learned is that we're always in the process of becoming. Thank you, Michelle Obama, for that quote. And so it is, her book is a gift. Her book is a gift. I've learned in the last month how much, despite I've been focusing on and trying to set goals and take daily action towards those, but let go of what the outcome is. I thought that I'd been making progress on that, and I realized I have a long way to go. Because you were mentioning earlier about how this is so out of our control, and we have, it shows how little control we really do have over what happens in our lives. And only what we can control is like how we interpret it and the action then we choose to take in response.
Yeah.
And my own coach asked me a couple of months ago something that I came across, that I wrote down, and I was flipping through one of my journals, and she asked me, or challenged with me to consider, how can you be still while still moving?
Whoa.
Right. So she's talking about how can you just be in yourself and accept what is coming while still moving and progressing forward. And so I already know my 2021 word of the year. If it doesn't change before, it's the word is be.
Ooh.
Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much in that. Isn't that, oh my gosh. So when you say that, Louise, I think about when you're trying to control everything, you can't be present, fully present.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like all of this that's going on right now has almost forced us to be so much more present in our lives than we ever wanted to be. And like, nobody wants to learn life lessons this way. Like this is like, you're like, no. Like I can now list 10 things that I would have never chosen before as better ways to learn big life lessons. But I think it has forced us to just be more present. You have more time to be present with yourself, which we absolutely have to do. Have to. You can't be present. I don't think you can be present with other people if you are not being present with yourself.
That's huge.
And like, that has been one of those things. I know you and I talked, I don't know if we talked about this last week or in text, that I hadn't been like taking the time to journal and read and just really process through some things. It was like certain things I'm like, okay, these are the big things. I need to process through this. But there's not just one big thing, right? It's all of it, because I don't get to take my life and say, well, this is the snippet that I want to take care of right now. It's all in the wheel. I go back to your wheel all the time, Louise. It's all together. And so if we're not being present with ourselves, if we're not taking that time, then it is really hard for me to then like leave my room and really listen to my daughter who's talking to me while I put peanut butter on her bagel. Mm-hmm. Because I haven't taken the time to just kind of clear my own thoughts and make sure that I'm ready for the day. And so, yeah, I mean, I love it.
I was actually thinking about getting that, and this is a bit premature because this just came to me like yesterday. So I realized I have to sit with this for a little bit, but I was actually thinking that I want to get that tattooed on me, which made me think I might get all of my words of the year tattooed on me.
I love it. I'm always down for more tattoos.
Right? I know.
I just need the tattoo parlors to open back up.
I know that. Speaking of opening back up, and I can't believe I'm actually going to talk about this when we've been talking about something so serious. I get my nails done. I get them actually like dipped in this stuff that's, I'm sure, quite toxic, even though they say it's non-toxic. I just ignore that part of the, I prefer to sort of be kept in the dark about that. Regardless, I get them dipped in this stuff. This powder that gets a few layers of color on my nails that make them look perfect for as long as I want, as long as they last, which is about 4 weeks. But all the parlors are closed, and I don't know how to get this off. And so if anyone listening has New Genesis powder dipped nails, and you know how to get it off yourself, if you can please, after the show, send me the instructions on how to do that and what products I need to purchase, that would be really, really helpful. But to that, with everything being shut down, which is it's mind-blowing actually to think about the extent of this shutdown. Like, the world has really kind of come to a halt. There is no country untouched. I think that also triggers, or makes us be with ourselves more. And I see people who don't know how to be with themselves.
Mm-hmm. We've ignored this for so long as a society. And I think there's even self-care shaming that goes on. Mm-hmm. And I think that I used to be one of those people. I was like, oh geez, why is so-and-so on another spa day? And, like just so judgy about the whole thing. And then, as things happen in your life, you realize that part of the reason that you're not able to cope with those things is because you've never focused on self-care. And we need self-care more now than I think we ever have. And so, it's hard, but I think it's like, we have to take this time, like I said, like being present with yourself, taking care of yourself, whatever that looks like. And it looks different now than it did a month ago. So you kind of have to get creative in how you're going to do that. If it means, making your own bath bombs out of whatever's in your kitchen, there you go. But there has to be that emphasis on self-care, and not only like for yourself, but teaching your kids self-care. They don't understand this. My daughter doesn't understand why she can't go across the street and play with her friends. She gets it from the sense of, yeah, there's something going on and school's shut down, but really helping all of my kids understand, what this means and the impact, and that I need to look out for their mental well-being as well. Yeah. But I can't do that if I'm not taking care of myself. It's like you're at best, you can give it a half-ass effort, and eventually the dam breaks. And depending on how long this goes, like, we have to start taking care of ourselves. We don't know if it's like 1 month or 3 months or 6 months. You can't outlast it if you're not.
I feel like once again, it's just another example of something that's being highlighted, a little crack that I've seen in the lives of many people. Unfortunately, over the last number of years, I've had my business. This crack of not caring for self and not looking inwards is really being exposed and really being widened. And I'm curious to know what self-care looks like for you during this time, because I think it's really helpful when we hear, and I'll share what self-care is for me as well, because maybe for people who are listening who haven't done self-care a lot, have no idea where to start, and they're being asked to start in a time where going to the spa would have been a thing that they may have thought, okay, I can do that. What are you doing?
So obviously getting back to reading and writing and journaling has been so important for me. I didn't realize how much I was missing it. Fitness has always been a big thing for me. So just making sure that I'm not letting that go to the wayside. I see a lot of people going, I'm going to gain the COVID-19 and all this, it's like there's ways to work out, like regardless of whether you have access to gym equipment or not right now, like there's a million videos out there, like just do that. So just making sure, trying to get out every day for fresh air, because like right now it's like, oh, I'm just gonna stay in here. I don't have to go anywhere. So almost forcing myself outside. But yeah, otherwise, oh gosh, what else am I doing? I think there's a lot of dancing going on, a lot of jamming out to music, and yeah, so it's a lot easier to dance in your pajamas.
It turns out, hey.
I look amazing doing it.
I think it's just, I appreciate you sharing that stuff, because I think it doesn't have to be, as you were mentioning a moment ago, it doesn't have to be the big spa days. Actually, oftentimes that's not what it's about, because that's not something you can do every day. Like self-care needs to be some big things for sure, if that's your thing, but it needs to be littered throughout your day every day. Mm-hmm. And if you can go to the spa every day, I'd love to also message me. Let me know how that happened in your life so I can make it happen for me. But most of us can't do that, and that's fine. And so I really feel like this is a moment, this COVID crisis is a moment where in all parts of our lives, we're being brought back to basics, right? You and I talked, you've done a lot of revealing, so I'll reveal this about myself so you don't feel like you're the only one really revealing big things. That when we spoke last weekend, you were saying, Louise, what came to mind recently was how awesome that you had the foresight to get rid of your debt last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish I, could say that I could read the future and, I did that knowing this was coming. It's not the case, but I certainly took responsibility for a piece of my life that I wasn't really feeling good about, that I didn't like where I had gotten to. And so if self-care is one of those things right now that you really don't like where you've gotten to, like, this is a time to be paying attention to that. I think of move more, eat well, love more.
Yeah.
There's some doctor whose name is escaping me, who I remember reading that move more, eat well, and love more is what he said is turning around all of his patients. So he's a medical doctor, turning around so many of his patients who have high blood pressure, heart stuff, and it's much simpler, friends, than we're making it out to be.
Yeah, it's we need compassion, right? And it has to start with the way that we see ourselves, the way that we talk to ourselves, the way that we love ourselves. It's so funny because I wrote this thing down. Oh my gosh, it's so weird, Louise.
I love this. Keep going, Olivia.
So I wrote this down and I shared it with a friend of mine a couple of weeks ago. And then it's in this book. Oh my gosh. I feel like I should have you talk while I look for this.
We need some music.
Yeah.
Like
see if we can.
Some theme music or something.
Olivia's searching here. Oh my gosh. Well, it was probably it wasn't that long ago. Had to have been like a month ago.
So what was the topic?
But the topic was like self-love. And, that you cannot love others more than you love yourself.
Mm.
And when you don't love yourself, you're actually limiting the way that people are able to show up in your life. And so I feel like right now we need compassion and we need connection. And connection looks different. And even compassion looks different than it did before. But if we can't be more compassionate for ourselves, then we're going to limit the connection that we can make with other people. And especially when there's physical distance, right? When there's literally a wall between you and the other person, because there has to be, we really have to make sure that we're putting the right building blocks together to be able to establish those strong connections.
This is huge. This is huge. I'm looking for something as well as you're looking. This makes for a really great podcast when we're both looking for something. But I think what you just shared is really significant. Sounds very Brene Brown influenced. And then
it's in the book. It was in the book this morning. Yeah. So this is what I don't even know if this is exactly what I wrote, but it said, let people show up for you. Appreciate it and know that you are worthy of love, support, and genuine relationships. This is part of what it means to be vulnerable and be thankful that someone is there to hold you in those moments. But to truly absorb the goodness, you must accept that you have value and you are worth the effort. You are worth the fight and you are worthy of love and forgiveness. So I wrote this at the beginning of the month. Yeah.
Like, holy shit. I feel like, looping back in, this is all about really mental health, but looping back into more direct conversation with mental health, I feel like these quiet moments that we are forced to be having with ourselves that people are feeling massively uncomfortable in because they don't have the tools to sort of navigate what's happening in the depths of their own minds. This is the kind of stuff that's getting exposed. Before we started to record the show, you were commenting on something that I think would be worth bringing up, and you were commenting on what you understood. You don't have the stats on this. We're two mums talking mental health here, so we're not looking for stats, but your recollection of some cuts being made to mental health. You're talking about the integration of mental health and there being no health without mental health. Let's go there.
Yeah. So if I'm recalling correctly, in the U.S. Recently, like in the last few years, there was a cut in the budgeting that's provided for mental health care. And so, you may get it with your medical insurance. Obviously, medical insurance is different in the U.S. than it is in Canada. But just depending on what your provider gives you, your options may be limited. But in terms of like the funding for, free or reduced price services, there's just less funding out there. There were centers that just had to completely close. And so just the amount of resources that are available to people, whether they have the finances to support it or not, it's just, it feels very limited. And, fortunately, I'm in a position where I can pay for the services that I need. That's not everybody's case. And it's like, when I look at it and I look at how mental health and physical health are so closely intertwined, you cannot have one without the other. You absolutely cannot. And if you try, I feel like it's a short-term thing. It's short-term. I don't care if you are in the best shape of your life. If you are falling apart inside, eventually it's going to manifest itself physically. And you may continue to look perfect, but all of a sudden it's like that heart attack happens, or, some other illness, or you're just in chronic pain. All of this stuff.
Or your marriage falls apart as I'm raising my hand, right?
Yeah. It's like, if we cannot take care of, our mental well-being, of our brain health, of our, all of that stuff, then it eventually trickles. I just feel like it's a short-term game to think that, well, I can treat this illness, this physical thing that I'm dealing with, and not work on what's going on in my head and in my heart, because the physical stuff is just going to keep manifesting in some other way.
Mm-hmm. I think that we're seeing this, certainly, I'm seeing this challenge with friends we're all facing around the world. We're facing this COVID crisis, obviously. And so I think it shows how pervasive mental health challenges are. Now, I think it'll have caused mental health challenges in people who weren't necessarily experiencing them. It will elevate and escalate and bring to the surface those who have been struggling but have not been wanting to expose it. And then, of course, those who were already struggling, it may very well create greater challenges as well. And so I'm hopeful. I am so hopeful, as the eternal optimist that I am, that out of this, one of the things that is going to change is some of the stigma around mental health, and some of the resources that will get, resources meaning financial resources, that get put towards mental health. Because imagine if all of us were more resilient mentally, and we entered this COVID crisis in a very different level of mental well-being as a collective.
Yeah.
That's the benefit of being mentally healthy, is being able to navigate the bumps of life. Now, this is a massive fucking bump.
Yes, it is.
For sure. Like, maybe not quite as fair to call it a bump. But I think, it really highlights what's lacking, and it hurts my heart. You talked about some of the deficiencies in the situation of mental health, available of mental health care in the US. Well, I can't say it's much better in Canada. without knowing the details, obviously, of the US model for healthcare as it relates to mental health, in Canada, it's not like treating physical health, which is so fascinating to me. So yes, anyone in Canada can go to the doctor for free. You go to the doctor, you don't have to pay, you don't have to have insurance. You have insurance by being a Canadian citizen. That's how you get to see a doctor.
Yep.
But that's physical. As soon as it's anything to do with mental health, there is coverage. This is a bit of a lie. There are psychiatrists who will be covered. You have to wait about 1 year to see one.
Wow.
So good luck. Yeah, right. We have great care if you have attempted suicide and need to get hospitalized. Great care. I have a child who was holding knives to his throat at the age of 6. And when I called the children's hospital, they said, well, has he attempted suicide? I said, no, but this is what he's done. And this is what he's said. He's holding knives to his throat. They said, we can't help until he's actually attempted. That's the state of the mental health situation at a really, really high level. Again, a mom talking mental health in Canada. And that's not okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I don't want to use the word crazy. I feel like it's the wrong word in the context of our conversation. But
it's okay. With two moms talking mental health, it's okay.
I don't have a politically correct term. It's like to think that it has to be worst case scenario before we can really get the right resources into somebody's hand. And I don't know like what all the reasoning is behind that. I'm sure there's a lot of histrionics that go along with that. But I think that it absolutely has to be a wake-up call to the way that the healthcare system is structured and what we give people in terms of these are the options that are available to you. I know people that have great health insurance cannot afford to go see a therapist that they desperately need to see. Or I remember I had this colleague once, her son was having some pretty serious anxiety issues. And she goes, these were the budget cuts we had to make in our house in order to support. And she goes, I know 100% it's the right decision, but like the rest of the family is now, paying for this because we don't actually have it covered under our health insurance. And it breaks my heart to think about that stuff. And the thing is like, therapy is just good for your well-being overall. and the fact that we don't use that as a preventative measure, it's a little mind-boggling to me. I have a friend who, she and her partner are not married yet, but she's like, we're actively in therapy because we want things to be good.
Yeah.
When we get married. It's the building block to really good things. And we need to put a better emphasis on the importance of it.
You're right. Because we know that you don't start exercising after you have a heart attack to then get healthy. We know, even though some people do that, and I'm not judging them for that. Just, we know that in order to avoid that, we do things now we eat well and move now so that doesn't happen. To your point, I feel like that's therapy, right? Yeah. That's these tools and resources that we need to have at the ready, all ready, so we can navigate these bumps. So recognizing that, we're not going to solve all of these problems, although you and I have some really great ideas.
Just call us.
just call us. Phone the two moms talking mental health, and we'll solve them all. So am I hearing from you, and I know this I think would be my answer, am I hearing from you that self-care is the best place to start? Recognizing we're in this crisis now, the reality in which we are in now, and we are seeing people in crisis. I'm seeing people in the place I'm doing consulting with. We are talking, our leaders, all we are talking about is how to take care of yourself in this time.
Right.
We are talking about productivity because depending on people's own personal situations, they're in a place where they're like, yeah, okay, we still need to perform. We still have got work to do and still deadlines to meet. Let's shift the deadlines and our expectations. Kind of like we were talking about at the beginning of the show about adjusting our parenting expectations. That's happening. But the bulk of our time and our effort is on supporting people getting the right amount of sleep because people aren't sleeping. people stressing out and then unable to get out of the busy brain or the stressed out brain into the thinking brain. There's no thinking happening when we're losing our mind over what's happening in our situations. So where do you think we start? Is it self-care? What would you say?
Well, I mean, I think even self-care can be a tough place to start if you've never been doing it. And so, you think about the fact that we've always struggled with this idea, and I don't even like the term. I'm going to use it, and then I'm going to say that I don't agree with it. But the whole work-life balance thing, or getting all of the parts in harmony, getting that wheel rounded out. And now everything is compacted into, 2,500 square feet or however, maybe less, maybe more, maybe less, just depends on how big your property is. Now everything has been compacted into this small area. So you're trying to make all of those things work in harmony. If you have anxiety issues, if you have, fear about the future, all of these things are just so compounded right now. I think that there's going to be some people that self-care is going to be a tough place to start depending on how they view that. But I think that if you're stuck and you're not sure where to start, like, there are free hotlines. Call one of them and talk through, or if you have a good support system, call that person that is going to help at least listen and give you like one simple thing to do. It's gotta be like simple, attainable things that people can do. And self-care is going to look different for everybody, but I think baby stepping into it, for me, I was just kind of like, I felt like I was catapulted into like having to just like bathe in self-care because I had neglected it for so long. And fortunately, I could do that. I could pull a bunch of things together and start implementing them into my life. It's not going to be quite as easy for everybody else. And so, yeah, I mean, I say yes and no. I think some people are going to have to talk through some things before they can even do that one nice thing for themselves, whether it's writing something down. I think they may have things that they just need to talk through with somebody, which is self-care.
You know what? I was going to say, I actually think this whole concept of self-care shaming that you mentioned before, I think we've got this idea, people have very different ideas about what self-care is, that it's the luxurious things, but it's actually can be the smallest things that are actually an act of self-care. And phoning a friend is an act of self-care.
Yeah.
Phoning a hotline because you're struggling is an act of self-care. Going outside for a walk, even if it's 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Even if it's actually standing outside on your front porch because you've not been outside of your house since we've been put into quarantine, that's an act of self-care.
Yeah. I think even saying no.
Oh my gosh, that's a huge one.
It is. Well, yeah, it's a huge thing because we're saying yes to everything right now, right? We're like, oh, we're at home, so we can do everything. Yeah, I can meal prep. I can do my work. I can teach my kids algebra. Like, we're saying yes to everything because we feel like, oh, we now have access to all of these things. We can't get toilet paper and bread, but I can do everything else. And so it's like, it becomes like this yes game. Like, we're going to play the role of, like you said, the superhero, stay at home, working, teaching mom or parent. This could be any parent. And so it becomes like this, it's okay to say no. It's okay for me to say no to my kids about whatever it is that they think that I should be making myself available for. And like, I'm going to use that word balance again. I got to find a better word for it, but it is really looking at everything that you actually need to do in a day, prioritizing and being okay with saying no and not carrying the weight of anybody else's disappointment. You cannot own anybody else's disappointment in all of this.
That's a huge one too. Wow, that's huge. I think whenever we say yes, whenever we say no to something, we're saying yes to something else.
Mm-hmm.
And so what is it you want to be saying yes to? What is it you need to be saying yes to in that moment? A different word that
yes to self-care, right?
Yeah.
So for me, and I know that I've struggled with this, like my tendency is to like get up early in the morning,
Okay, wait a sec. You need to say what early is. You need to qualify this.
I want you to know that I pushed back to 4 a.m.
Oh, well, that changes everything. It used to be 3 or 3:30?
Between 3 and 3:30. Yeah.
Okay, so good for you. That is an act of self-care.
Yes. My next is actually getting more sleep. But like, it was just like, I'll get in the grind right away. And saying no to the grind at 4 a.m., saying yes to coffee and time with my own thoughts and reading and things like that, self-reflection. Like, other people will look at it and go, yeah, that's a totally normal thing to do if you're going to get up that early in the morning. I had put other people's expectations, and it wasn't even anybody else's expectations. I had projected expectations and then started carrying the weight of those around. And so yeah.
So I wonder, for the listeners, I encourage you to ask yourself, what expectations are you projecting? Have you taken on that others have of you? And that didn't come out right. You said it way better there, Olivia, but expectations that you've made up. You created a story in your head about the expectations that others have of you. What are those? I encourage you to really consider what those are and then ask if those are true. Ask if those are true. I would hazard a guess that you'd be surprised by the answers.
I would agree. Absolutely.
So one thing that I wanted to ask you about, because I know that you have a great example of this, and this is a space, leadership is a space that I love to be in and I love to work in. And I see so many leaders who are wanting to be great people and great leaders to others who are struggling in this time. I'm not looking for details here because I know that you've shared details with me. I'm not looking for the level of detail that you shared with me before, but I'm looking for you to share some examples of what good leadership has looked like for you in the last month.
Oh my gosh. If I could even begin to explain how the people that I work for have shown up, not just for me, but for everybody. Certainly I've had some specific circumstances that they have just, I can't even begin to explain the level of compassion and love that I've felt during all of it. But even as this, this shift with everything and in like the way that they needed to run the business and things like that. But their whole philosophy was, you take care of yourself, you take care of your family, and then we take care of clients. But if the other two things aren't working, then we certainly can't expect the third thing to be working. And there has just been this emphasis on making sure that everybody's okay, checking in. Like it's not like a hour-long conversation. No. It's just a quick, how are you doing? Is everything working okay? I mean, it's, like, did you get everything plugged in together and your computer turned on? I mean, it was just very simple check-ins, but they've just been very conscientious about making sure they're checking in with their teams and pulling us all together and making sure we see one another and that we don't feel isolated and that we're on an island. We are essentially all of those things, but really just trying to continue making sure that we feel as whole as we can during this process. And I mean, I can't even.
And so how has that affected? The reason I was asking that was because not only do I love leadership, and so kudos to the leaders at your company for creating that space. And I know that has nothing to do, this recent crisis actually has nothing to do with how they their philosophy on leadership. That's how they already have been. Yeah. Again, it highlights the good, and I think it highlights the cracks, as I've already mentioned, right? So the great leaders are going to rise even more, and those who are challenged may rise to the challenge, but may struggle in trying to figure out how to do that. How has their leadership impacted your mental health during this time?
Oh, I mean, I felt like I've had permission to have those moments where I just felt like, I hate this. Can I tell you how much I hate it right now? And I have permission to feel that way and talk to you about it and you may say, I'm having the same kind of day, or you may be like, okay, so what do we need to do to get beyond that right now? And it's incredible to see, just to have that moment where you're like, it's so whatever I feel, I'm 100% entitled to my feelings right now. And if it's impacting my work, we're going to talk about the steps that we need to take to, first of all, make sure that I get okay with like how I'm feeling about everything. But then let's talk about what we need to tackle next. And it's always been this approach of, I want to make sure you're okay first, and then we'll talk about what we need to do.
And isn't it amazing what happens? Because I've had a couple of leaders like that. It actually then allows you to get to the work so much faster and easier.
Yeah.
But if you don't do that, you never get to the work because you're so busy trying to pretend that you're okay, or to ignore it, or put it in a bottle, push it down, whatever expression you want to use. And really, when you just shine the light on that, it allows you to either put it on pause, it allows it to dissolve, it allows it to resolve, or whatever. Yeah. It allows you then to move. It allows you then to take action.
Yes. Yeah. It's because otherwise you're like stuck in the whole mind suck, right? Where it's just like, I can't get out of this. Like my thoughts are churning around this one thing. I'm mad, or I'm upset, or I'm sad, or I'm frustrated, I'm disappointed, whatever. Any number of things that we're all trying to, we're feeling and trying to process all the time, but especially now. So it's like, yeah, once you have permission to really like examine those feelings, and then like just one tactical thing that you can do, like, oh, okay, well, this is so much easier than trying to just like live inside my head for the rest of the day.
I love quotes and cliches, and you're probably going to hate this one, so I'm sorry to throw this out on the show that you're on. But the truth will set you free. It's kind of that. It's so true. It's like you examine it for a moment. We're not talking navel gazing. We're not talking about spending 5 hours or 5 days. It can be 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. And it actually is so freeing, and you can feel it leave your body. We hold stress, emotional, mental stress, in our physical body, in the muscles of our body. And it is remarkable what happens when you start to have them lift. We're coming at the top of the hour, and you and I, as we have done many times before, could talk for much more than an hour. What have we not covered that you want to share with our mums and parents right now who are listening to these two moms talk about mental health?
I think the only other thing, I think we just have to not only do we have to give ourselves a break, we have to give everybody a break. Everybody. This is unprecedented. And I know like there's so much out there in social media. There's stuff that I just choose to ignore. I don't want to read it. I don't want to hear about it. There's still like some of that shaming going on about, different activities that people are choosing to do to spend their time and whatever. How people choose to get through this, as long as it's not hurting anybody else, we need to let people do what they need to do. Whether or not I choose to make my kids do curriculum for 4 hours and somebody else makes them do it for 6, or, whatever that is, like, we need to just let people move through this in the healthiest way that they know how. What's good for my family is going to be completely different than what works for my neighbor. Like, I think we need to give each other more space and more permission and more compassion. I think Brene Brown had posted a quote the other day about like withholding, like we cannot ration love right now. We can't ration it with our families, and we can't ration it with the other people that we're interacting with. We cannot approach this from a place of judgment. We can say the whole thing should have been handled differently and we should never be sitting here. We can do all of those things, but it's not healthy and it's not productive. And it just creates frustration and resentment. And that is not a healthy place to be starting from at all.
Olivia, that was a gem. You've just dropped bombs and gems all over this hour. Truly, thank you so much for sharing your time with me, as you always do so generously, and for sharing it with my listeners today. Truly, my heart is so happy.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm so excited. This was the podcast that I've wanted to be on. Shirts.
Oh yeah, and so those who happen to be watching on YouTube, I forgot. How did we not talk about the shirt?
I don't know.
So the shirts, check these out, friends. Badass and beautiful. These are courtesy of Olivia. Olivia got these made for us. She's known as the you give t-shirts are your
it's kind of my thing.
Kind of your thing.
Yeah.
Your thing. And as related to the whole t-shirt thing, I wanted to connect it to something you talked about earlier, which was a journal that you recently got. I have a journal called Evidence Journal. And in my evidence journal, I hold on to, and it helps me in times like this. It helps me through times where I might be feeling, I can hear my Sally, which is my voice I have named, who says not nice things to me. She's my inner mean girl. And so Sally will get quieted down sometimes when I pick up my evidence journal and I read what's in it. And in it was a note that I received from Olivia. It was about a year or two ago that came with this t-shirt. And I want to share that as a, I guess maybe a little strategy. It feels good when you look through these cards and these emails and these notes that people have sent to you in times where you might not be feeling like your best. So that for me is another example of self-care. And it also reminds me of the love that Olivia has shown me in the time that we have known one another. And for that, I'm really grateful.
Oh, well, I love you.
I love you. Thank you. And I love all of you, my loyal listeners. So thank you for showing up again, as you do every week. Remind you that information about my radio show and all of my guests can be found at louisehreed.com. Also, if you would like the notes and quotes from today's awesome show, because your hand could not keep pace with Olivia's gems, you can get onto my email list at louisehreed.com and you will receive it to your inbox. I will only send you an email once a week. And that's it. So big shout out to my producer, Cameron Steele at Contact Talk Radio Network. And as always, my other half, Jay Andrews. Until next week, I'm Louise H. Reed, wishing all of you a bold and courageous day. And I will leave you with one of the gems that Olivia just dropped. And that is, give each other more space and more compassion, and do not ration love. Goodbye, my friends.